the auditor controller, and the more I learn about teeter, the less I know. And I don't think we're going to bring me to a full understanding today, but I just want to toss a couple of things out there that we can all kind of be having in mind. And as I understand it, the teeter, in one sense, is a debt that the county owes to itself. Right. Is that correct?
That's correct. The county owes it.
Okay, so it's the county's debt. The county, one hand of the county has loaned money to another hand of the county, creating a debt in the tax resources account of $11 million. So there's a negative in the tax resources account of $11 million. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that is the teeter debt.
Yes, that's the principal.
And the county needs to pay back that $11 million with the other hand into the tax resource account, at which point it will come up to zero and the teeter debt will be repaid.
Yes, if the county has the resources to appropriate that money into that $11 million hole.
But, and where will that $11 million have gone?
It'll come up to zero. It'll become a zero account. I mean,
and that tax resources account where the $11 million teeter debt is recorded, what other liabilities are there against that account currently that would need to be paid by whatever funds it would receive from that $11 million?
I'm not following.
Well, the $11 million, there's no other call for it other than to zero out the $11 million debt in the tax resources account.
Yeah.
It's not that the $11 million goes into the tax resources account and then the county has to pay it out to somewhere else.
No,
but then you'd be
no.
generating revenue every year from that point on from the teeter payment.
Yes.
And that's where it would be a revenue source instead of a botched revenue source.
Well, I know, but I'm putting out there that, you know, this is a debt that the county owes to itself. I think it's as simple as an accounting maneuver. Well, that's where I'm going with it now, and until I understand otherwise, I'll come back to it.
5 or 6 days of talking about it, you understand it.
Yeah. Let's move forward on this.
Okay.
If I might, Mr. Chair, there are instances in California, believe it or not, that the teeter plan actually does work. In Calaveras County, the Board of Supervisors adopted a policy that all revenues from teeter would go to fund technology improvements. We used to put away about $600,000–700,000 a year in a small county. The board dedicated in its wisdom that all those funds would be used to purchase technology upgrades. And there are other counties that are doing the same thing. A teeter plan can work. It was a sound decision. Where Mendocino County went wrong is it borrowed against that money and never paid it back. So it's not that there's philosophically anything wrong with the teeter plan. It's how it was applied in Mendocino County that has created the problem. Also,
yeah, but not only we borrowed and not paid it back, we've got away with it.
Here we go. Here we
Not,
go.
Well,
no, we're not getting away with it
So
now.
Yeah, let's okay. Yeah, let's keep going.
I want to.
Supervisor Colfax got me on a timeline here.
Yeah,
Allison, we got to
we've
move
already
forward.
passed it.
and it
Go ahead.
does affect our credit rating, as County Council reminds me.
Well,
As long as that debt is out there, it affects our credit
Yeah,
rating.
it's on our annual audit report.
Mr. Chair, I would say the teeter plan has worked. It has not been properly accounted for, but the monies that were paid out have been returned to the county in the form of the recovering the tax payments, recovering the penalties, recovering the interest, but it's been accounted for in a very loose way, shall we say. But we'll come back to it as we move along,
You
not
could say
today.
that. Yes, you could say
Yeah.
that.
No, essentially the revenues were spent on something other than paying back teeter.
Well, they were spent on general fund purposes.
They were spent on balancing the budget strategy,
So now,
which I'm guilty of.
here's some more numbers. So if numbers kind of set people off, we'll have this discussion again. Debts and liabilities. This is, and please take these, you know, these are kind of rounded numbers as much as possible, so don't hold us to the last 1,000. But this is principal. This is the principal that are owed on debts and liabilities. And as far as I have been told, these are the debts and liabilities that the county has at this point in time. Certificates of participation, primarily for capital projects, pension obligation bonds you're familiar with, underfunded pension obligation bond debt. Essentially, the county underfunded the account from which the payments to the pension obligation bonds went. The pension obligation bonds got paid, but the county's debt went into debt on its own account. This is the end of the line. This one is paid off, and I don't know, we're gonna have a mortgage burning party or something. Then you've got teeter plan, and you've got the mental health deficit here.
You know, for members of the public, I'd like to bring up one point on that, the debts and liabilities. If you read the General Services report on our insurance system, we actually have insured $179 million worth of buildings in this county. So, you know, that never shows up any. This shows the total debt of the county, but I think it's also fair to show the assets of the county too. And I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah.
But we're paying insurance on $179 million worth of county structures in this county.
So the county does have assets, and you're correct. People just aren't as interested in those.
Yeah.
So, and then this is the 2008-9 payments towards those debts. So on the one hand, you had the principal. Now you've got the payments, which consist of both payment against the principal as well as interest. So on an annual basis for certificates of participation, we're paying about 1.6 million. Pension obligation bonds are about 5.2. Our last payment on the underfunded pension obligation bond debt is 839,000. The teeter plan and interest, we spent 700,000 from the general fund, and at this point for this year, the mental health deficit, we're not paying anything towards that.
But that $839,000, that was our last payment.
Yes.
So that's going to go away next year.
Yeah. So the total in payments that we're putting out this year is about 8.3 million. Okay, so budget reserves, just thought you might want to see this. 5% of the general fund appropriations is our kind of policy target. That would be 3 million. We're currently at 1.9. Contingency fund is supposed to be around 3% of general fund appropriations. That'd be 1.8 million. And we're at 522,000, and as the small print says, to be used for the shortfall.
Which is actually already blended in.
Yes. Okay, so tackling the budget. There are budget guidelines, there are county priorities, and those priorities then would lead us to look at re-engineering opportunities and revenue opportunities. So there are a series of revenue guidelines, and these are ones that our office and department heads kind of use as we're looking forward to the next year. And it talks about examining fees. There's some discussion about changing collection of TOT. Sherry Schapmeyer, our treasurer tax collector, has been looking at that, and I think those are all things you're going to hear more about. And then we've talked about holding a board workshop in July, not fee increases, because you've got an April hearing for that, but broader revenue issues that MCOG and others are talking about. Then there's compensation guidelines, and so we need to look at what that, and just point out that MOUs for 5 of the 9 bargaining units expire by the end of September, and so we will be beginning negotiations fairly soon, and that's certainly going to be a factor in this next year's budget. Re-engineering guidelines, you know, there's some ideas that have come forward. Look at those at your leisure. Budgeting guidelines, 1, we always look at proposed budgets against the available net county cost. The policy that was previously mentioned about not backfilling with county funds. In past years, we've had departments absorb all the increases. Those are the kinds of things that we're looking at, and you'll see that reflected in the budget instructions. There no funding for new projects, using fees to recoup operational expenses. Again, kind of, this is the battle plan.